and Sports Tech World Series for organizing our ASTN Masterclass this afternoon, and welcome everyone. My name is Martin Schlegel, and I'm a director of the Australian Sports Technologies Network, or ASTN in short. For those of you who don't know about the ASTN is an industry-led, membership-based organization which was founded in 2012 to really accelerate the use of technology in sport. And one of the mandates that the ASTN has is effectively to build the industry here in Australia and help young companies, startup companies, entrepreneurs, as well as what we call scale-ups to grow all over the world. And for Australians, that typically means obviously exporting. And with the series of masterclasses, we effectively take a look into some specific topics that are important around the world. And so I'm really delighted today to present our guest today, Professor Sascha Schmidt. Sascha and I had a first meeting a couple of years ago when we were introduced at the Innovation Summit that German Bundesliga ran in Germany. And it was on the occasion that the ASTN actually had a trade mission into Europe, and Sascha and I met there. We then crossed paths again at the Laboratory for Innovation Science at Harvard, Lish, where Sascha is a member of the digital initiative at Harvard Business School. And Sascha is obviously comes from Germany with a background where he is the director of the Center of Sports and Management and a professor for sports and management at WHU, Otto Beisheim School of Management in Düsseldorf in Germany. And he's also the academic director of SPOAC, that's their Sports Business Academy. He's obviously has a global reach and network, not only into the US, but also into Asia with other appointments that he has there. But what's interesting from our point of view, from an ASTN point of view, that Sascha is also one of the initiators and lecturers at the MIT Sports Entrepreneurship Bootcamp. Earlier in his career, he worked at McKinsey Company in Zurich, New York, and Johannesburg. But I guess we don't want to talk about the past today, Sascha. It's more about the future, because your masterclass will actually cover probably a look into the next 5 to 10 years and cover some of the technology-induced changes that we've seen and we continue to see in sport. And I guess it'll also provide us an insight in your work that you've done recently with basically summarizing a number of these trends in your newest book, 21st Century Sports. So without wanting to welcome, and yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Martin, for this very warm welcome and introduction. And good morning from Germany. It's about 7 o'clock in the morning. Although I'm not a morning person, I'm really excited to speak at the masterclass here. And yeah, so why don't we just dive into the content, and we will have time for Q&A at the end. And yeah, I would say thanks for also providing some background of myself. So as said, I didn't spend my entire life in academia, but also worked in consulting and built a company on my own. So I know how hard it is, how much sweat and tears you need to build something up. And yes, but I'm doing it not just by myself. This is my team. So we are based in Düsseldorf. We work very applied with a number of clubs and leagues and associations. And at the center of our interest is indeed the future of sports. And here we look at the interface of business and technology. And Martin, you mentioned it before, that we work on an international basis with the Harvard Business School and MIT to really explore how sport can be used also from a management perspective. And that's great about sports because it's unique in a way that you have data. You have performance data on an individual and on a team level. And this is something that you don't have in business. And so just to give you one example, what we do, we use sport as a laboratory to observe and investigate management issues. For instance, so this is a football simulator that is based in Graz in Austria. And here we were looking at the impact of feedback. So you see that red box. The player who is in the simulator got a certain task, and we provided feedback. We provided relative feedback and absolute feedback, and detailed versus high-level feedback, and looked if there is an impact on the performance. And interestingly, there is an impact of relative performance feedback. So that works, and absolute more than or better than absolute feedback. And it's very much dependent on the personality, if detailed or high-level feedback works. Yeah, but this I don't want to go deeper on that, but just to give an idea what kind of stuff we are doing. But today, within the next hour, I would give you some examples of the work we are doing in various fields, ranging from long-term forecasting to insights of business practice, where we look at best practices and really benchmarks in the industry, up until to future readiness. So what does it really mean from the eyes of an entrepreneur, but also from the eyes of a club or a league, which are potential customers of you. So let us start on the long-term forecasting. And here it's, in fact, it's the book that Martin was mentioning, 21st Century Sports. So what did we do in this book? Here you see, so we invited technology experts. So people from MIT and Cambridge, Brisbane, Stockholm, and so on, who really have an understanding of a technology. And we asked them to make a projection and say, look, okay, how does your technology that you really deeply know will impact sport in the future? And this from a business standpoint, but also the athletes, the consumers, and so on. And so we looked at three groups of technologies. So on the one hand side, physical technologies, these are like robotics, sensors, fibers, textiles, coatings, composites, so like really hardware we are looking at. Number two, information processing technologies. This is all about software. It's like ranging from big data, advanced analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, and so on. And the third category are human interaction technologies. And this is all about AR, VR, MR, voice, or mobile technology in general. So if you look at these technologies, you can take different angles to look at it, and and it's very important in discussions about the use of technology, what kind of angle you take. And here we differentiated three different angles. So of course you have the athlete, then you have the sport consumer, and the manager who is kind of running the business. And if you take technology, for example, a wearable or a smartwatch to track performance data. So from an athlete perspective, the athlete is using it really to improve his training and his match performance. The consumer is using the same performance data to enhance his experience, yeah, or the data he needs for betting, he needs just for entertainment. So for instance, that he sees the level of tiredness of his favorite athletes during the match. And the manager, he could use the same performance data for identifying the best talent in scouting. Yeah? So as you see, if you talk about technologies, you must make clear. So what group of technologies you are looking at and what angle you take. So let me just go through the different perspectives. Let's start with the new athlete. And of course, if we look at emerging technologies, we can really foresee that a lot will change in terms of the athlete itself. And so we distinguish between 5 different categories of athletes that we are expecting in the future. So number 1, we have the able-bodied, unassisted athlete as we know today, but it's an athlete that is heavily supported by data and technology, but not using these technical aids in the competition. Number 2, athlete assisted by technology, and this could be either able-bodied or Paralympic athletes, and the technology is used to directly improve performance within the competition. Number 3 are robot athletes. They could compete against each other or against humans. Then number 4, we see mental athletes. Yeah, they are engaged in competitions where cognitive skills are the key differentiator. And then number 5, we see virtual athletes. So these are not really humans anymore. These are digital twins that got projected via holograms, and that will change the competition. It's less competition between athletes. It's more competition between software developers. So this might sound very futuristic and science fiction-like, but if we look of what we already see today, examples we see already today, then it makes a lot of sense. So if you look at the left-hand box, so at the able-bodied athletes supported by technology, so I talked about the football simulator, and I will make a deep dive on the TSG Hoffenheim, pretty advanced football club using a lot of technology to make the athlete better. If you look at the left-hand corner down, athletes assisted by technology, here you see on the left-hand side so-called exoskeletons. These are robot-like suits an athlete could wear to strengthen the moves. And you already see these exoskeletons today in healthcare or in military. And it's foreseeable that you might use them in sports one day. And then they will enable an athlete to perform on a higher level than a usual able-bodied athletes could do. So the next step, the next dimension then would be, then we would talk about cyborgs, maybe in 20 years from now, with computerized body parts like human-controlled robotic prostheses who compete against each other. So let's switch to the next one, robot athletes. So what we already see today is and there robot athletes, we would differentiate between humanoid robots who are controlled by a human being via brainwave interface, or totally autonomous robot athletes. And this is something that we already see or already know from car racing, where you have competitions with fully autonomous cars already. And yes, and we also see the first signs of robot competitions You see a picture there from the Robo Cup. That's the kind of the football World Cup where they're competing every year. And they say they could compare performance against humans by the year 2050. And what's amazing, and that also came out in the book, that there are already robo games taking place. Like 3 years ago, we saw it in the US, about 700 robot athletes were competing, coming from 18 countries. And they were fighting in classical competitions like football, basketball, or weightlifting. And then on the down right, mental athletes, and that's something we know. This is like e-chess or esports in general. And here we talk about athletes with really superior skills in terms of perceptiveness and reaction speed. You might know that an esport professional, he can already make up to 8 decisions per second, which sums up to 480 decisions per minute. And so this is really, really incredible. And so while these intellectual sports already exist, brain research could, in the distant future, enable completely new intelligence competitions between humans and machines, or in yet unknown thinking disciplines. Okay, so that was kind of the athletes, the changes on the athlete level. Let's switch to the consumer, so second dimension. And what you see, if you look at various studies about millennials or Gen Z, there's one kind of megatrend that you see, and this is participation, or the need for participation. And so we are not talking about like being a passive fan, just watching your favorite team. It's about you want to be part of it, part of the game. And so in the US, we already see a so-called fan-controlled football league, where the fans, they vote for the team's logo, but also for the coach, for which player to transfer, for the starting lineup, even to real-time votings of the next play within the game. And so the next step would be that they also get or that they also participate on the club's financial income. Yeah, so with the use of technologies like blockchain, smart contracts, and cyber currencies. So that's cryptocurrencies. So that's already technically possible. So the next step, and this of course is many years ahead from us, but if you think about it, that could be nanobots. Yeah, so nanobots, these are like super assets. These are like sandcorn, size of a sandcorn, and they're in the blood of the athletes. And with a nanobot, you might stimulate muscles on request. And so we know it today already from computer games. We can give an energy boost to your hero or to your monster or whatsoever. And this might, in the distant future, be possible that fans could vote on who gets the next energy boost via nanobot. So participation could also mean a completely new virtual experience, that you are very close to your favorite athletes, and this in a kind of a virtual world. So one is that you are as a virtual spectator, that you use VR to get the best seat in the stadium, to be very be at the front row in the stadium. Or really participating in a sport competition. So that means you compete against holograms. You can choose to play against your favorite athletes, your legend you are admiring, and so on. Yeah? So but this would be a completely new experience where the consumer is kind of co-producing the consumer product. Right, and so the question is, like, if we see these changes in athletes, we see this changes in the way a sport is going to be consumed. This has, of course, a lot of implications for managing the sport and the organization of sport in general. And so, just to mention a few, if we have new athletes, if we have even new sports that got created via technologies, so someone needs to design attractive competitions, yeah, and needs to decide how to deal with the new categories of athletes like cyborgs, and if they compete in what kind of competition they should compete. We also need to make our heads up around what is taking place really physically in a stadium, or what's taking place in a virtual space, and how sports events in the future are really taking place. Yeah, we have seen it with the European Football Cup that got moved. We see it with the Olympic Games. So it's really a question. So what kind of competitions we will see in a virtual world, and what remain physical. Then, and this is about the kind of the overall organization governance of sports, we need to ensure a fair competition in new and emerging sports. And so we need to decide what kind of technologies to deploy to support, for instance, referee decisions in a reliable manner. And last but not least, there will also be new challenges coming. Yeah, if we talk about doping, so technology-based doping might replace medical doping, and we need to find ways, or managers need to find ways to detect and penalize cyber doping. Okay, so that have been some insights, some reflections from the book, and from like long-term forecasts I talked about. So let me continue on TSG Hoffenheim. So I promised to bring you some insights about that clubs. We wrote 2 cases about the club, and I don't know if you have the chance to take a look at that prior to the masterclass. But it's really a unique and special club, because so it is owned by it's owned by the co-founder of SAP and a multi-billionaire Dietmar Hopp. And this club is really in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, you see the stadium, so there's not really a lot about. So it's not in a metropolitan area. So it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's a kind of a fairy tale, because that club started in the 8th league in Germany, and so they needed 20 years to get into the first league. You see the track record here. So from the 5th league on, it took 20 years from the 5th league to get into the Bundesliga, which they reached in 2008, 2009. And from then on, they have been always member in the Bundesliga. 2 times it was very close to, or they got threatened to be relegated. But now they established themselves as one of the top tier teams in the Bundesliga, even playing in international competitions over the last couple of years. So it's an exciting story. And the question is, so what made this club successful? And it was not the money. It was not the money that got pumped into the club by a billionaire. It was about innovation. And so as I said, the club is more or less in the middle of nowhere. You see the picture. They built it around an old castle, which is quite nice. But they have very modern infrastructure, building that basically on the green field. And I would like to, on the left-hand side, you see a number of technologies they apply, hardware and software. And I would invite you to look at 4 technologies in more detail. And so let us start with the so-called footbonaut. I don't know if you heard about the footbonaut before, but this is it's similar to what I showed you at the beginning. You have this 14 by 14 meter artificial grass. The player is in the middle. There are 8 ball machines around him or her, and you see target fields. They are illuminated, and so the player needs to shoot the ball into the field. And the nice thing about it is you can play around with acoustic and visual signals, and you can basically track everything that's happening in that footbonaut. So just to give you an idea, let us look a couple of seconds on how it looks like in practice. Yeah, so that was in German. This was about real-time control. No? You can basically track everything about the performance of the player, the contact times, the speed of the ball, the time he needed to really control the ball, and so on. And this is important to look at the technical skills and abilities of a player. So number 2 is the so-called helix. Helix is a 360-degree kind of a cinema that you have, and there you can train and test cognitive abilities and so-called executive functions. Yeah, so it's about perception and play reading skills, and you can see it on the left-hand side. So it's about you have gameplay situations where you follow players and do kind of tasks, but you also have like really gamification, like video game-like exercises that they run in this helix. And so currently they are not only testing football players, but also firemen and doctors and so on. Huh? So it's quite interesting, but it's basically about the cognitive abilities of a player that you can test and train. So next innovation is the Sap Sports One. And this is basically the database, the backbone where all the different data is being stored. And the gentleman you see here, that is Peter Görlich, that is the CEO. And I just wanted to share with you a little clip about this Sap Sports One, so that you get a good understanding of what it is about.
We have 2 pillars. We have the complete 360-degree view of the fan, as well as the 360-degree view of the player. With Sap Sports One, we built a single solution because we saw that there are a lot of isolated applications within the sports industry. Our strategy was to create an end-to-end solution for the athletes, but at the same time, our goal was also to make the software very simple. We mainly collect training data regarding the player's physiology and fitness. We'd like to predict if a player is in danger of overtraining or whether he's doing well, and how training units put a strain on different functional groups. It's about collecting, saving, and analyzing data, and also about displaying it. We always look at the current data and at the long-term developments as well. players' individual factors are also important. The human factor. A player can give direct feedback on his fitness, as simple as possible, directly via the smartphone, and we can collect that from SAP Sports One. SAP Sports One contains scouting analysis. It encompasses the entire player fitness, including health data, injuries, game statistics, and game analysis. We have video analysis before every game. We analyze our opponents, and 20 minutes later, every player gets this information on his phone and can go through it again.
Yeah, so we got SAP Sports One, as said in the clip, it's just the SAP database that is collecting and storing and displaying all player data, but also all data that is kind of on the field, but also off the field. Yeah? So also you have the marketing, merchandising, ticketing data also included into one base, so one platform. And is that all experts are working on the same platform and can also interact. And so the next step that TSG Hoffenheim was taking this database into real life action. And so this is called the SAP Interactive Data Space. And this is quite a fancy room if you are there. So it really looks like Captain Future if you're sitting there and you wait for Spock to come. But it's a room, and you have basically 16 stations there. So 16 people can sit there around this table. And so this really supports the interaction between the various experts. So you have like scouts, you have analysts, you have medical staff, but you also have marketing, finance people discussing, for instance, about player development, discussing about transfers. And so this is somehow unique, and at least we haven't seen something similar anywhere else. And so question was then, so if you got all this data, so what can you really do with that? And is it already possible to run advanced analytics and artificial intelligence applications there based on the data? And so what we found when we were talking to them is that so they take the player data, yeah, and this is performance data from training, but also match day performance, yeah, the physical condition of a player, cognitive capabilities, and psychological situation. This is done via the VTS, the Vienna testing system. So they are on a regular basis do certain tests and psychological assessments. So, and with all this data, you can in fact really apply advanced analytics. For instance, what you can do is you detect patterns and anomalies in performance and physical condition data, and this is can be used for load management and to prevent injuries. Then with the data, you can identify best talents for the club for scouting. So in case you get enough relevant data of players, but here the main point is, so what means best talent? Best talent means that the best talent for your own playing philosophy, because a fantastic player for one team doesn't mean is a fantastic player for another team. So it's really much dependent on the philosophy, on the club philosophy, but also on the team and the game philosophy the club is realizing. And then if we look into the future, so it's a question of, I would say, a couple of years that you can really make predictions on the further development of players by building models around top performance capabilities. And so then you can see how far away is a player from his potential. And this will be a kind of the holy grail in football. And so what you can do with this data in any case is you can overcome human biases, yeah, because we are all biased, and you see a lot of decisions are being made in football or other professional sports that are heavily biased, yeah. And so with this data, you it's a step forward to overcome these biases. All right, so I already talked a lot about, so what is, how does the long-term future look like? We've seen some best practice examples in the here and now, but the question now is, so what does it mean for you? And so I've seen on the participant list that we have quite a number of participants that run their own company, that got into sports tech. And questions, so what can you learn from all of that? And this brings me to, first of all, technologies. Yeah, I guess you are as excited as we are about new opportunities that are created by technology. So we see completely new forms of engagement through blockchain technology. We see new storytelling opportunities, new devices. I talked about that, new virtual reality experiences, and even completely new sports. And so from an entrepreneurial point of view, the question is, so you need to decide where do you want to solve a problem? Yeah, so where do you identify an issue that needs to be solved, or where do you identify pain points that need to be addressed? And in order to not to kind of structure your thoughts or your playing field, we derived, or we put the different perspectives together. On the one hand side, the tech angle and the three categories of technologies I talked about, and put it on a matrix with the user angle. And so this provides you a 3x3 matrix, which is quite helpful, yeah, to see where you are. It's a very simple one, but when you start to see, okay, what problem do I solve, or what issue do I address, you need to also be clear about, okay, which boxes do you want to tick? Yeah, is it something that is purely for the athlete? Is it for athletes and consumers, or is it a management application? So that's very different. Yeah. For instance, if we just take one technology, let's take a drone. So for an athlete, the drone could help him to get new perspective on his training performance, could make him better. Yeah. On the consumer side, the drone could help to have a new consumer experience, yeah, a different one, an improved one. And on the management side, the drone might improve processes, operating processes that you have in the stadium, that you have in your facilities. But it's a very different angle that you take, how you look at the technologies, and that would be something that might be useful for you to have a framework where you can basically structure your journey. And so far, there wasn't anything like this in the literature. Okay, so from you turning to a potential client, we developed something which is, we call it a diversification framework. So if you put yourself into the shoes of your client, which could be a club, a league, an association, whatsoever, it's important to take their perspective and to identify problems, issues, or areas of improvement you might address. And so for this, we also developed a 3x3 matrix. And so here it's between business proximity and the geographical reach. And of course, so if you are in the lower hand, left-hand box, you are in the core business. So at a football club, this would be the football itself. then there is business related to that football, and there might be unrelated business, and you can have that on a national, on a regionally close by level, or on a global level. Okay, so let us use the drone example again. So you have this opportunity of a drone, and let us start the drone flying in. So here, if you are in this box, you're talking about you use a drone in training, for instance, yeah, to get new perspectives on players. This is what I talked about, to make the athlete, your team better. This is, of course, in the core, it's national. Then if you, if you move it up, so you could also use the drone for stadium security, yeah, to look at fan movements prior to the game or afterwards, to improve your logistics, your supply chain, and so on. And you might even use that knowledge and sell it to other clubs. So that would be something that is related business. Yeah, it's not. It is within your environment of the football stadium, but it's not the core business. It's related. And then if you move further up, you could imagine that you say, okay, let us diversify and build up our own drone team that is participating in an international drone league. And so this would be an unrelated investment, because it's not anyhow dependent on your football performance. And so this is unrelated. And so you could do that in the national level, or you could invest in a national league, but you could also invest in a European league, or in a global competition. So then you would move towards the right-hand side. Yeah, just to explain the mechanics of that matrix. And staying in the shoes of your potential client, we looked at, okay, what did clubs do in terms of diversifying their business through technologies? And we see all kinds of examples, and these are just a few. So they build new virtual experiences. We see a lot of startup corporations between clubs and also tech companies, and so on. And so our question was, does that pay off? Yeah, is it really, does it make sense for a club to diversify its business? And that would be also an argument for you if you go and suggest anything to a club that goes in the direction of diversification through technology. And here we did very recently two empirical studies, and these are the last two slides before we go into the discussion. But so first of all, we looked at clubs in the English Premier League. And we looked how related business diversification versus unrelated business diversification has an impact on the financial performance of the clubs in terms of revenues and profitability. And here we looked at two dimensions. So one is product diversification, and the other one is international diversification. And what we found out is that there is indeed a significant positive relationship between related business diversification and financial performance. And we saw that the related business diversification is better in terms of economic impact than unrelated business diversification. And with regard to internationalization, that varies. So you can't generalize based on the data we got. So it's a mix. So some clubs really profit from international diversification. Others didn't. And it is pretty much dependent on the size of a club. Yeah, so we need a certain size that international diversification is paying off. Okay, so that was study number one on the Premier League. And the last one that we did was now during the Corona pandemic. We were looking at all 21 stock listed clubs in this season, so in the last couple of months, and we applied the so-called event study methodology to get an investor perspective. Yeah, so we looked at how investors reacted to the COVID shock, and if they prefer diversified club over non-diversified clubs. And here we looked at as well at product diversification and at geographic diversification, and you see how we measured it. Here, key findings were that investors prefer stocks with high levels of product diversification. And so that means less dependency on the core football business. And we found a moderate negative effect of geographic diversification that might be attributed to the high risk that they see in geographic diversification. But overall, we can subsume that diversification could be a potential tool to overcome the so-called match result trap, so the total dependence on the sportive performance of the clubs, and to decouple that from the financial stability of the team. Yes, so this was a lot of content in about, let me take a look at the watch, in about 45 minutes. And now I guess we should give you some time to ask questions for clarification, or if you have any points of interest you would like to discuss.
So I'll jump in there, Sascha. We've had, I know, 2 questions dropped into the chat rather than the Q&A, which is fine. So you'll be able to see them as well on the chat there, Sascha, but I'll read the first one out to kick things off anyway, which is from Stuart Flint, which was, how do you think COVID has affected sporting clubs' understanding of their need to diversify?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's the process has started. So if you talk to clubs prior to Corona, diversification was not really a topic, yeah, because they are so much focused, and I am talking about German football clubs now. And so diversification was not a big topic. So we had a little discussions around esports, if like buying an esport team or getting engaged in some forms of esports. It was a topic, but with Corona, this really accelerated and got speed. And now clubs are really thinking about how to decouple the dependence of financial performance and sportive performance. And so I see there are opportunities also for entrepreneurs to think about how to support clubs in diversifying their business.
Thank you. We've got another one which is a bit longer. I'll read through it. You might want to bring it up on your chat if you've got the chat. Click the chat button, Sascha, you'll be able to read it. And if anyone else has any questions, you can either drop them in the chat or the Q&A. Either one is fine. So what are the deep learning models you're using to improve player performances? What type of data are you collecting? What are the open source data sets that are available for us to build models, if there are any that you know of?
Yeah, so I was talking about advanced analytics and artificial intelligence or the use of AI at TSG Hoffenheim. But at the moment, it's not there. It's not there yet. And TSG Hoffenheim is by far the most advanced club in Germany in this respect. But they are not really working with artificial intelligence yet. Yeah, so I would rather call it some applications for advanced analytics, but we don't have the insight into the box. This is something they, of course, didn't share with us, kind of what deep learning models they are working on. But it's really still at the start. So I think the first and biggest challenge was really to harvest the data and to get all this very different data into one platform to be able to run deep learning models at all. So unfortunately, I can't tell you more specifics about it.
No problem. Okay, if anyone else has some additional questions, please send them through now. I'll just turn to Martin, and have you got any questions that you've got from that session there, Martin, or insights potentially from your past experience there with Sascha?
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and Sascha. You were talking about the use of let's call it well, it's artificial intelligence, but I think what has the most application at the moment is probably in vision recognition or image recognition. So I know of a number of clubs that either are using technology from other providers, and it's probably here in this particular case, TSG Hoffenheim affiliated or with its close connection to SAP, that they didn't want to disclose that. But I'm aware that a number of clubs, also in the Spanish league and also in the Premier League, are using advanced image recognition or to detect poses on athletes, and they do that obviously frame by frame on video that they are recording. My understanding is that has some success at the moment when you look at individual athletes. But to look at let's say 22 players on a pitch is relatively difficult, particularly if you just have the general broadcast feed, because the current models still have some problem recognizing the third dimension out of a two-dimension broadcast feed. So for instance, it typically comes to problems, from my understanding, when you want to identify the ball on the pitch. Is it up in the air or is it actually traveling on the surface is not a trivial question for some of these algorithms, because obviously the question of taking two-dimensional broadcast feeds and trying to translate that into a third or three-dimensional location is some challenge. But with individual athletes, in terms of their skill execution, that is currently ongoing. And there is to come back to the question, there is actually open source APIs available both from Google and from Microsoft that I'm aware of that you can link into.
Actually, there are quite many firms out there who try to crack it on the kind of image recognition, motion tracking. So it's interesting. The German Football League, they just I think 2 years ago they launched a new program where they do joint ventures and private equity share deals with startups, and there are two startups that are in that field. So one is Track 160, and the other one is Moves. And but I guess that is a kind of the holy grail in football. Once you crack that you can really measure individual performance in an ongoing game. Yeah, so not just like one individual player, and this is across all kind of different stadium settings and environments. Because then you can apply totally automated technologies. And for instance, there's a company called Sport Total, and they use intelligent cameras on amateur sport stadiums. So you have that kind of intelligent camera with a 180 degree. And so if you could apply a fully automated image recognition to it, then it would be even possible that you can track the performance of amateur players. And I think that would be kind of really a revolution in sports.
Yeah, you're right. So companies like Pixelot or out of Israel and those guys, they have these automated centralized cameras. But coming back to the Bundesliga, do you know much about the operator of the German Bundesliga have an agreement with Amazon Web Services? Have you got any insight into that, where that is at the moment? Because they were talking about image recognition and play analysis on that level.
Yeah. So what I know is that they are, that's all still in development, and that there are also other collaborations between also, for instance, Sporttotal, the one I mentioned, with Amazon, and so they have projects on artificial intelligence, and so there's a lot of stuff going on, but I don't think that they are even close.
Yeah. Okay.
We've got another question, which I'll run through. So some clubs and federations appear to be moving their data and innovation teams in-house. For example, Barcelona's Innovation Hub, while some are outsourcing to third-party data/AI providers. What are the advantages of each, and which do you see will be the most popular as more clubs engage further in innovation and data?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So what you see is all sorts of, you mentioned Barcelona's innovation hub. You see similar things at Arsenal. They have an innovation hub, and so I think 4 or 5 other clubs have so-called innovation units or innovation hubs. And so I think one aspect of these innovation hubs is for marketing purposes, I guess. In Barcelona case, that's not only marketing, so they are also doing an interesting IoT project, also together with the Spanish government, where they use the stadium also to apply all kinds of IoT related applications, testing them there, collecting the data, and so on. So I guess, like in the long run, that they need to build their own intelligence, and they need to develop their own skills to stay competitive. Of course, there will always be like top AI providers out there where you who simply can invest way more money into further developments. But I see that the clubs will build up their own units, will build up their own talent and own skills, and then need to do smart partnerings and collaborations. So stuff that you mentioned, Martin, between Bundesliga and Amazon Web Services, for instance.
I think another really good local example of that, depending on, I think the big thing there is how people define what in-house is in-house. I think moving forward won't be, starting from scratch. In-house is, having a team that's knowledgeable and focused on innovation to collaborate with the right people. And a local example of that difference is the AIS here several years ago was very focused on almost starting from scratch and building their own, whatever they're looking at innovation-wise. They were focused on it, but they had no interest quite often in collaborating, and that doesn't work. And I think the model we're seeing more often is that model where having that, focus internally and the right people internally, but being open and using collaborations to get it going.
What's interesting is, so if you look at what can a club offer, and so it's the stadium, in a kind of a normal setting. Now we're not talking about the Corona setting now, but usually it's a fantastic testing ground. Yeah, as I mentioned, this IoT project that Barcelona is doing. So the same or similar things started at Eintracht Frankfurt, a German club, and that's fantastic. So if you have like 40,000 spectators coming every other week to the stadium, that is a perfect testing ground, and then the kind of millions of fans and followers in the virtual world. So I think this is a strong asset that sports clubs have, which they can bring into smart corporations with high-tech giants.
And another question in from Stuart Flint, is there a language gap between sporting clubs' understanding of what they need and the terminology used by the providers of excellent solutions?
Yes, that could happen. So I think most of the clubs, and we talked about TSG Hoffenheim and Barcelona, but most of the clubs still have a kind of a skill gap if it comes to new technologies. And then, of course, they are getting bombarded by technology providers and agencies who come with great proposals. And so I could indeed imagine that there could be a language gap, but this is just like the difference or the kind of the lower skill base in the clubs. And so this kind of adds to the discussion we had before, so that there's a need to build this own talent and skills to be able to also use technology providers in a kind of smart and efficient way.
Perfect. I'll just give one final call because I know a couple of questions have been coming in from any additional questions from our audience. So if you've got any further questions, please just flag them now in the Q&A. I'll just give that guys 1 minute just to make sure no one's got any additional questions for us from the audience. And while we're waiting for that, any final thoughts from your side there, Martin, before we go through a bit of a summary and wrap up?
Yeah, I guess there's a couple of things here from my point of view that are interesting, Sascha, for what you worked out. So the one aspect is obviously the athlete dimension, but then the other dimension is sort of fan engagement, and we've looked at that on number of different aspects here as well. And everybody in terms of the clubs says, well, we want to engage our fans in a more meaningful way and in different ways. But I guess the one big problem is that from a club's perspective, they only know statistically, I think, for every 3 tickets sold in a stadium, they only have one name. And so we've seen obviously these trends where it goes to get rid of the ticket stub. So then you have an app and you can effectively know everyone in the stadium. But I think one of the things that you pointed out, which we've seen in the US, is how a live game is actually connecting with the fantasy league as the play goes on. So look, in American football, each play goes on, that actually changes what I do in my fantasy league. Now, what's your thought on that? Will we see that in football, in European soccer? That's probably difficult because it's a much more flowing game with less interruptions. But how do you see that? You talked about that in-game engagement and not being a passive spectator any longer. Where do you see that particular in Europe heading?
I think so. If you look at football, that is so European football, that is quite conservative. So they didn't change rules for decades. So I wouldn't expect that fans can be really participate in in-game modus or vote and decide on decisions that are affecting the game immediately, at least not for the next years. But what we see, and there's a commission that was built by the German Football League with 36 experts from all various fields. And there we discuss, so how could the future of football look like in Germany in particular? And so the notion of participation and having fans participate on decisions that are important to the club, that got really momentum. And so what I could see is that fans could participate on decisions that are affecting the club, not within the game, but in general. Yeah, and so here via, like as I said, via blockchain technology, smart contracts, and cryptocurrencies, it's technically possible, huh? So you can become as a normal fan, you could become like a shareholder of your club with also some rights, but I don't see it as said that you really have something where you have like in-game interaction that is affecting the game immediately, but maybe in the future. And I even talked about nanobots. Yeah, let's see.
Yeah. And a final thing that I'd be interested in, your view from, let's say, from Europe into Australia. And I put it a little bit provocative here. I see that there's a lot of good solutions that are being developed in Australia in terms of sports technology, but a number of things are actually always focusing on the performance side of the player. So it's if you provocatively say Australia, when they talk sports technology, they're talking sports performance. So they focus on, let's say, the 22. Stick with the soccer example. They focus on the 22 players on the pitch, whereas the Europeans and the Americans in particular, they look at, from my perspective, they look at the sports business side of things, how technology can be deployed. Is this something from your perspective that you see in a similar way, or am I reading that wrong?
So I don't know the Australian sports tech landscape as well as you, but there is a tendency when a startup gets formed that there's a lot of enthusiasm about the players and the game itself, and that was also one of the drivers why many entrepreneurs just get into the field, because it's driven by their own passion and emotion. And so it's not a surprise that many really start at the players and the player performance. That was one of the intentions of the kind of the matrix that I was providing to kind of broaden that perspective and open the field, and maybe using the same technology for different purposes. And just one interesting example here is Kinexon, a German company, and they were also in the field of performance tracking of players, and they have like more than 20 NBA teams under contract. And but what they did is they kind of used their technology now for distance tracking in not only in stadiums, but kind of everywhere where you had a number of people interacting. And so I think that is also something, when I talk to entrepreneurs, sport tech entrepreneurs, I also say like, hey, widen your horizon. And it's not only about the players, and you might use your idea and just put it into a different context, and it works. And so that might be something to think about. So even the insights you get from your technology you use in player performance, what else could you do with that?
Yeah, so leverage that and find adjacencies and use the matrix that you have sort of like to look across the immediate application. Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah.
Perfect. We don't have any other questions that have come through, so I think we'll wrap things up there. A massive thank you to Sascha for taking his time out to provide some really great insights across the session, and thank you as well to Martin for being on the panel with us. And outside of any final comments, again, just a big thank you for everyone attending. We'll be sharing the recording of this session as well as the 2 masterclasses that were run earlier in the week to attendees. So you'll receive a note about that to be able to access those and watch them. And just a final thank you, a few thank yous coming through in the chat from attendees. So thanks again, Sascha and Martin.
Yeah, thanks. It was a pleasure to be part of this. Thanks a lot for the invitation and the warm introduction. And yeah, hope to see you soon.
All right.
And if there's anything, any follow-up questions or so, you know where you can get me.
Your email's there, so I imagine if someone's got any sort of deep follow-up questions, they can shoot through an email.
Oh yeah, let's see. There's a U missing. And you.
Yeah.
EDU. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Have a great day, Sascha.
You too. Thanks.
Thank you, Sascha.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye, Martin.
Bye.
Bye.